You ought to be grateful that His Grace noticed you at all." Lady Honoria Blackwood spoke loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear. Amelia Rowan stood beside a marble column at Blackmere Hall, one gloved hand still resting on the untouched glass of lemonade she had been carrying for her widowed aunt. Across from her, Honoria and three young ladies in Paris. Silk watched her with bright, expectant faces. His Grace had asked Amelia to dance. Amelia had declined. Not coyly, not with a blush meant to invite a second attempt. She had simply said she was attending Lady Marianne as a companion and had no wish to be mistaken for another woman hunting a coronet. The orchestra had faltered. Then Honoria laughed. So did the others. One gentleman near the fireplace covered his mouth badly, disguising his amusement. Honoria lifted her fan toward Amelia's plain grey gown. A woman with £6 to her name should be cautious when pretending she has no interest in a duke. More laughter followed. Amelia felt heat climb into her face, yet she did not lower her eyes. At the far end of the room, Sebastian Ashcombe, Duke of Valencrest, had heard every word. The entire ballroom waited for Amelia to break. She did not. And before that winter was over, the woman they mocked for wanting nothing from a duke would become the one person capable of exposing why so many women had wanted him for all the wrong reasons. Before we return to the beginning, tell us where you are watching from tonight. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you enjoy stories of dignity tested beneath glittering chandeliers. And if these stories bring something worthwhile to your evening, please support the channel. Now let us go back to the first cold morning that brought Amelia Rowan to Blackmere Hall. 3 weeks earlier, Amelia had owned 2 respectable dresses, 1 serviceable cloak, 4 books that had belonged to her father, and £6.11 in a purse she rarely opened. She had also possessed a name that meant almost nothing beyond the small village where she had been raised. Her father had been a country solicitor of modest practice, not poor enough to be pitied, not prosperous enough to leave security behind. For 24 years, Amelia had believed that careful living could protect a family from humiliation. Her father had kept his accounts balanced. He had paid the baker on Saturday. He had polished his own boots when the housemaid left to marry. He had taught his daughter Latin, phrases she had no social use for, and arithmetic, that gentlemen often found unbecoming in a woman. Then fever took him in 11 days. The lease of their small house belonged to someone else. The office belonged to someone else. His clients went elsewhere. The furniture was sold. Amelia discovered that respectability could disappear more quickly than hunger. For the first time in her life, she understood that a woman might be educated, diligent, and entirely helpless before a piece of paper bearing a man's name. Her only near relation willing to receive her was Lady Marianne Rowan, the widow of a baronet and a distant cousin of Amelia's father. Lady Marianne was neither wealthy nor cruel. She was simply tired. At 58, she suffered from a stiff, knee-weak lungs and a terror of traveling alone. She needed a companion who could read letters, remember appointments, arrange medicines, and prevent her from leaving gloves in railway carriages. Amelia needed wages, so an arrangement was made. £30 a year, meals included. It was not a life of leisure. It was work conducted in drawing rooms. Amelia accepted it without complaint. Lady Marianne's first winter invitation after Amelia joined her came from Blackmere Hall, the principal country seat of Sebastian Ashcombe, 7th Duke of Valencrest. Even in Amelia's village, people knew the name. Valencrest possessed estates in 3 counties, a London house whose staircase had been painted by an Italian artist, and an annual income discussed with the reverence ordinarily reserved for scripture. He also possessed a reputation. He would not marry. For nearly 4 years, mothers had brought daughters within his orbit, as predictably as merchants brought wares to market. One had praised his horses without knowing the difference between a mare and a gelding. Another had declared a passion for agricultural reform after learning that the Duke owned nearly 20,000 acres. A third had fainted against him during a garden party, though witnesses later observed that she had carefully chosen a patch of clean grass. Sebastian had declined them all, some gently, some with silence. One so decisively that the young woman's mother departed before breakfast. Society had turned his refusals into entertainment. The Duke of Valencrest, people whispered, could smell ambition through 3 layers of perfume. Amelia found the phrase vulgar. She also found the entire spectacle rather sad. Blackmere Hall appeared through sleet on a Thursday afternoon. Its stone front rose beyond black yew trees and iron gates, the windows glowing amber against the early dark. Carriages crowded the sweep. Footmen hurried beneath umbrellas. Horses steamed in the freezing air. Inside, warmth struck Amelia's face so suddenly that her eyes watered. The entrance hall blazed with fire and candlelight. Silver trays passed beneath painted ceilings. A chandelier trembled above velvet cloaks, white gloves, pearl combs, bowls of preserved cherries, and little cakes glazed with sugar. Lady Marianne sighed with relief. Amelia thought immediately of the kitchen staff who had been awake since before dawn. That difference was one her father had taught her to notice. Beauty was rarely effortless. Somebody had usually carried the coal. Their rooms were on the east side of the house. Lady Marianne received a respectable guest chamber. Amelia was placed in a smaller room adjoining it, narrow but warm, with a washstand, a brass bed, and a window overlooking the service courtyard. She preferred it. From there, she could see stable boys running beneath sacks, kitchen girls shaking cloths, and a laundress arguing with a footman over a missing basket. Blackmere seemed less intimidating when one watched the people who kept it alive. That evening at dinner, Amelia saw the Duke for the first time. Sebastian Ashcombe was 34. He was not striking because he was handsome, though he was. He was striking because he looked bored by his own importance. He sat beneath the portrait of a dead ancestor wearing armor, and spoke courteously to the woman on his right. He listened when addressed. He smiled when required. Yet Amelia noticed how often his expression changed after someone mentioned land inheritance or marriage. Something closed, not anger. Recognition. Across the table sat Lady Honoria Blackwood. She was beautiful in the deliberate way of a woman who had spent years learning exactly what beauty could purchase. Her dark hair was arranged without a strand misplaced. Her ivory shoulders rose above deep green velvet. Emeralds rested at her throat. Her father, the Earl of Merrow, owned an old title and very little money. That fact was not mentioned at dinner. It did not need to be. Everyone knew. The Merrow estate had mortgages. Its tenants complained. 2 of Honoria's brothers had debts in London. A marriage between Honoria and Valenkrest would not merely be splendid, it would be rescue. Amelia understood the motive before she understood the danger. Honoria did not want Sebastian, she wanted permanence. A name no creditor could embarrass. A house no mortgage could swallow. Children who would never see furniture inventoried for sale. Amelia might almost have pitied her. Almost. Then Honoria began speaking about another young woman who had recently left Blackmere. Miss Evelyn Harcourt had apparently believed herself close to becoming Duchess of Valenkrest. Honoria smiled while telling the story. She had written His Grace 3 letters in 1 week. A lady farther down the table laughed. Another asked what the letters had said. Honoria tilted her head. What such letters always say when a woman desires a title more than she values her dignity. Sebastian stopped eating. The movement was so small that Amelia doubted anyone else noticed. His knife remained beside the plate. His face revealed nothing, but his hand had tightened. The table fell briefly quiet. Then someone changed the subject to hunting. Amelia looked down at her supper. Something about Honoria's certainty troubled her. Not the cruelty, the knowledge. How did Honoria know how many letters Miss Harcourt had written? Amelia said nothing. She was a paid companion. Paid companions survived by observing doors, without appearing curious about what lay behind them. During the next week, she saw little of Sebastian. Blackmere contained nearly 40 guests, and enough planned amusement to prevent any 2 people from being alone unintentionally. There were carriage outings, cards, music, dinners, a visit to the parish church, and an afternoon when the gentlemen shot birds while the ladies pretended the cold did not exist. Amelia remained beside Lady Marianne. She read newspapers aloud. She fetched shawls. She wrote 2 letters for her aunt, and repaired the loose ribbon of a bonnet, because Lady Marianne trusted no maid with it. For the first time in her life, Amelia found herself moving through rooms where a single woman's bracelet might have paid her annual salary 3 times over. It did not make her envious. It made her careful. Money on that scale did strange things to conversation. People no longer asked whether a man was kind. They asked what he owned. They did not ask whether a marriage would be peaceful. They asked what settlements might be arranged. Sebastian's unmarried state hung over Blackmere like another chandelier. Every mother could see it. Every unmarried daughter could feel its light. and Lady Honoria stood nearest beneath it. The Duke first spoke privately to Amelia in the library. Lady Marianne had sent her to find a volume of sermons mentioned by the rector. The Blackmere Library occupied the west wing behind double doors that servants kept shut to preserve heat. Amelia entered expecting emptiness. Sebastian stood at a desk near the fire. Several letters lay before him. He looked up. Amelia stopped. "Forgive me, Your Grace. Lady Marianne asked me to find a book. You need not apologize for entering a library in search of one." His voice was drier than she expected. She crossed to the shelves. For several moments neither spoke. Then Sebastian said, "You are Miss Rowan." Amelia turned. "Yes, Your Grace." Lady Marianne's companion. "Yes." He glanced at the shelves. "And therefore one of the few people in this house with an occupation." Amelia could not tell whether he was mocking his guests, perhaps himself. She found the sermon collection and pulled it free. Sebastian watched her. "You do not enjoy house parties." It was not a question. Amelia considered lying. "No, Your Grace." His eyebrow lifted. "Most people lie more politely. Most people are not paid to return Lady Marianne before her medicine cools." Something almost resembling amusement appeared in his face. Then one of the letters on the desk slid to the floor. Amelia bent before she remembered that duchesses probably employed people to prevent dukes from retrieving their own correspondence. She picked it up. The envelope had already been opened. She saw only the front. Miss E. Harcourt. No address. No stamp visible beneath Sebastian's hand as he took it. But something else caught Amelia's attention. A thin black smear across the broken red wax. Soot. Sebastian placed the letter beneath the others. "Thank you." Amelia gave him the book. He looked at her for another moment. "Do you intend to marry Miss Rowan?" The bluntness surprised her. "I intend to remain fed, Your Grace." He laughed. It was the first unguarded sound she had heard from him. Then his expression sobered. Suppose both were possible. Food and marriage. A dangerous abundance. The room went still. The fire settled behind the grate. Sebastian studied her with the wary attention of a man accustomed to hidden meanings. Amelia suddenly understood. He expected an answer about rank, about security, about gentlemen with estates. So she gave him the truth. "I would rather earn £30 a year in peace than spend 30,000 belonging to a man I could not respect." Sebastian did not answer, not because she had offended him, because she had confused him. A knock came at the door. Lady Honoria entered before anyone responded. Her gaze moved from Sebastian to Amelia, then to the book in Amelia's hands. Her smile remained perfect. "Lady Marianne is asking for you." Amelia curtsied. "Of course." She passed Honoria on her way out. For one instant, she caught a faint scent, clinging to Honoria's sleeve. Smoke. Not fireplace smoke, paper smoke. Amelia dismissed the thought before reaching the corridor. Blackmere had 30 fireplaces. Everything smelled faintly of burning wood. 2 nights later came the ball. By then, Honoria had begun noticing Amelia too closely. At breakfast, she asked where Amelia had learned French. At tea, she asked whether Amelia's father had left property. During cards, she remarked that impoverished gentlewomen often developed ambitious imaginations. Lady Marianne heard that one. Her old face tightened. Amelia touched her arm beneath the table. "Do not answer." She could endure insult. Lady Marianne could not afford quarrels with women whose invitations mattered. That was how cruelty survived in respectable houses, not because everyone approved, because everyone calculated. The ballroom filled after 9. Candles multiplied in mirrored walls until the room seemed built of flame. Music rose. Jewels flashed. Outside sleet struck the windows. Amelia sat behind Lady Marianne unnoticed for nearly an hour. Then Sebastian crossed the floor. He ignored 2 young women positioned conveniently in his path. He stopped before Amelia. "Miss Rowan." The nearest conversations weakened. "Would you dance?" Amelia stared at him. Lady Marianne inhaled sharply. Across the room, Honoria's fan stopped moving. Amelia could have said yes. A dance was not a proposal, yet she understood instantly what everyone else would see. The poor companion, the unmarried duke, the beginning of a campaign. She rose. "Thank you, Your Grace, but no." Silence spread outward. Sebastian's expression changed. not insult. Curiosity, Amelia continued quietly. I am here for Lady Marianne. If I dance with you, half this room will decide by morning that I want something I do not want. His eyes held hers. And what is that, your title? Someone nearby heard. That was enough. Within minutes, Honoria had Amelia against the marble column and laughter moving through the room. Now standing beneath the same chandelier where the humiliation had begun, Amelia waited for the laughter to fade. Lady Marianne looked close to tears. Sebastian had not moved from the far side of the ballroom. Honoria leaned closer. You may play at indifference, Miss Rowan, but women like you always want the same thing. Women like me, women without protection. Amelia looked at her. For the first time in her life, she felt no shame in possessing little. Shame belonged elsewhere. Then I hope, Lady Honoria, that you never lose your protection. You might discover how much of your courage belonged to it. The laughter stopped, completely. Honoria's face hardened. The music had not yet resumed. No one dared speak. Then Sebastian crossed the ballroom. Every eye followed him. He stopped between the two women. Lady Honoria, he said, I believe Miss Rowan has endured enough entertainment for one evening. Honoria smiled tightly. I was only correcting a misunderstanding. Sebastian looked at Amelia. I see no misunderstanding. For a moment no one moved. Then he offered his arm to Lady Marianne instead. May I escort you to the card room, Lady Marianne? Nearly dropped her fan. Amelia almost smiled. Almost. The orchestra began again. The crowd dispersed. But Honoria did not forget. Amelia saw it in the set of her mouth. Later that night, after Lady Marianne had fallen asleep, Amelia returned to her own room. The candle beside her bed was burning. She stopped in the doorway. She had extinguished it before the ball. She was certain. Her trunk stood open. Nothing appeared stolen. Her two plain dresses remained folded. Her purse still lay beneath the linen. Her father's books were untouched. Then Amelia noticed the small writing case on the washstand. Its lock had been forced. Inside she kept letters from her father, household accounts, and Lady Marianne's travelling papers. She crossed the room and searched quickly. One thing was missing. A folded note she had found by accident that afternoon inside the library sermon book. She had not even read all of it. Only the first line. Miss Harcourt, your letters have not reached His Grace. Amelia stared at the broken lock. Outside, somewhere in the service courtyard, a door slammed. Then footsteps moved beneath her window. She raised the candle and saw a figure crossing the snow toward the west wing, a woman in a dark cloak. On one wrist, caught briefly in the kitchen light, flashed an emerald bracelet. Amelia's heart began to pound. It was not the theft that frightened her. It was the certainty that whoever had entered her room already knew exactly what she had found. 2,476 over 8,001. 20000 words. By breakfast, Amelia had already decided that fear would not be allowed to think for her. She told Lady Marianne nothing. Not yet. Her aunt had slept poorly, and the journey to Blackmere had already tired her more than she admitted. Amelia knew exactly what would happen if she spoke too soon. Lady Marianne would insist upon leaving. Questions would follow. Honoria would smile. The missing note would vanish into denial, so Amelia behaved normally. She buttoned Lady Marianne's cuffs. She measured her tonic. She arranged the morning letters beside the teapot. Only when Lady Marianne had settled near the drawing-room fire did Amelia excuse herself to fetch more writing paper. She did not go to the stationer's box. She went downstairs. The servants' corridor beneath Blackmere was warmer than the guest passages, and twice as busy. Copper pans knocked against stone. A kitchen maid hurried past carrying onions in her apron. Somewhere beyond the green baize door a man cursed at a jammed coal scuttle. Amelia had learned long ago that great houses told one story above stairs and another below. She began with the kitchen. Mrs. Pritchard, the cook, was too busy to notice her. The under-housemaid noticed everything. Her name was Nell Barlow. She could not have been more than 17. Thin wrists, red hands, hair pinned hastily beneath a cap, too large for her. Amelia had seen her carrying coal outside the library 2 afternoons earlier. Nell nearly dropped a tray when Amelia addressed her. Miss Rowan, forgive me. Have you a moment? The girl glanced toward the scullery. Only if Mrs. Pritchard does not discover I have one. It was the sort of answer that made Amelia trust her more. Amelia lowered her voice. "Did you see anyone cross the service courtyard after midnight?" Nell's expression altered at once. Not surprise. Alarm. Amelia continued. "A woman in a dark cloak." Nell looked at the floor. No miss. The answer came too quickly. Amelia did not press. She thanked her and turned away. Nell caught her sleeve. Only for a second, then released it, as if burned. "Miss Rowan." "Yes. Do not keep things in your room." The kitchen noise seemed to recede. "Why?" Nell swallowed. "People here know where ladies hide things." Before Amelia could ask more, the cook shouted Nell's name from behind the pantry door. The girl fled. Amelia remained still. That was the first piece of truth Blackmere gave her. It did not come from a duke. It came from a maid with cracked fingers who was afraid of losing her place. At 11, Lady Marianne received an unexpected visitor, Lady Honoria. She arrived carrying apologies. The performance was excellent. Honoria regretted the unpleasantness of the previous evening. She had allowed gaiety to sharpen her tongue. She hoped Miss Rowan had not mistaken teasing for cruelty. Lady Marianne softened immediately. Amelia did not. Honoria sat beside the fire. Her emerald bracelet was gone. Instead, she wore pearls. Amelia noticed. Honoria noticed Amelia noticing. Neither spoke of it. Then Honoria produced an invitation. A small luncheon would be held that afternoon in the conservatory. Only 12 guests. His Grace would attend. Lady Marianne accepted before Amelia could object. Honoria smiled at her. And Miss Rowan must come. The room fell quiet. Lady Marianne looked pleased by what she thought was reconciliation. Amelia saw something else. The pressure had changed. Honoria no longer wanted to humiliate her. She wanted to watch her. The conservatory stood against the southern side of Blackmere. A long glass chamber filled with winter roses, ferns and citrus trees moved indoors against the frost. Amelia disliked it the moment she entered. There was nowhere to disappear. No curtains. No dark corners. No excuse for privacy. Sebastian stood beside an orange tree speaking to Lord Merrow. Honoria's father looked older than Amelia expected. His shoulders had begun to stoop. His complexion carried the waxy pallor of sleeplessness. The Earl spoke urgently. Sebastian listened without warmth. Amelia caught only one phrase before Lady Marianne called her closer. "End of the quarter." Lord Merrow's face tightened. Sebastian answered more softly. "No further advances." The Earl stepped back. For one instant, Amelia saw naked fear in his face. Then Honoria arrived and slipped her hand through her father's arm. The fear disappeared. She laughed. Lunch was served at a long table beneath glass bright with winter sun. There were cold pheasant slices, buttered rolls, preserved apricots, Stilton little tarts and steaming chocolate in porcelain cups. Amelia ate almost nothing. Honoria spoke too pleasantly. Sebastian spoke very little. Lord Merrow drank wine faster than anyone else. Then the conversation turned to marriage. It was deliberate. Mrs. Bellamy, a widow whose daughter sat beside Sebastian, asked whether His Grace had ever regretted refusing so many admirable women. Sebastian looked at his plate. Not once. Laughter moved around the table. Honoria smiled. Perhaps His Grace merely awaits a lady too clever to admit she wants him. More laughter. Amelia did not join it. Sebastian's eyes moved briefly toward her. Mrs. Bellamy leaned forward. "And what would such a lady need to possess? Patience, perhaps beauty rank." Sebastian answered without smiling. An absence of arithmetic. The laughter weakened. Lord Merrow stopped drinking. Honoria's hand tightened around her fork. Amelia understood. Not all of it. Enough. Money sat at the table with them, uninvited. After luncheon, Lady Marianne asked Amelia to fetch her shawl from the drawing room. Amelia welcomed the excuse. She crossed the west corridor alone. Halfway there, she heard voices. A door ahead stood partly open. The morning room. Amelia stopped. Honoria was inside. So was Lord Merrow. Her father's voice was low and furious. "You said Harcourt had been dealt with?" She had been. "Then why did that companion have the letter Amelia's breath caught?" Honoria answered. "Because someone became careless." "Who?" "That does not matter. It matters if Ashcombe discovers the letters were intercepted. He will not. He already believes those women were writing to him for money." There was a sharp sound. A glass placed too hard against a table. Lord Merrow spoke again. "You cannot keep doing this." Honoria's reply was cold. "I need only do it until the settlement is signed. He has refused you. Not finally. He refuses women when they appear greedy. I merely make certain they appear greedier than I do." Amelia did not move. Every piece shifted. Miss Harcourt, the letters, the soot, the stolen note. Honoria had not been protecting Sebastian from fortune hunters. She had been manufacturing them. Then Lord Merrow said something that made Amelia's blood run cold. "And if Rowan speaks, she will not." "How can you know?" "Because by tomorrow, Lady Marianne will believe her companion has stolen from this house." Silence. Amelia's hand went numb around the banister. She stepped back carefully. The floorboard beneath her shoe creaked. Inside the morning room, the voices stopped. Amelia walked. Not quickly. Quickly would reveal fear. She reached the corner just as the door opened behind her. Honoria's voice followed. "Miss Rowan?" Amelia turned. Honoria stood in the doorway, perfectly calm. Amelia lifted Lady Marianne's shawl, which she had taken from a nearby chair without even remembering doing it. My aunt was cold. Honoria studied her. Of course. For several seconds neither woman smiled. Then Amelia continued down the corridor. For the first time in her life she understood the value of appearing ordinary while carrying dangerous knowledge. That afternoon she began to investigate. Her father had taught her accounts. That became her first weapon. She could not search Honoria's rooms. She could not accuse an earl's daughter. She could not demand Sebastian believe a paid companion over guests he had known for years, but she could observe. She returned to the library on the excuse of finding a novel for Lady Marianne. Sebastian was absent. The writing desk was locked. The wastebasket was not. Amelia knelt. Inside lay torn envelopes, spoiled sealing wax pencil shavings, and 3 discarded sheets of calculations. She reconstructed nothing useful. Then she found a small scrap of paper beneath the grate. Burned along one edge, only 5 words remained. Merrow account, 3rd advance, Friday. She copied them into the back of her prayer book. The scrap itself she returned. Taking evidence too early would tell someone she was collecting it. Then she examined the shelves. The sermon book had been moved. Its dust mark remained. The volume now sat 2 shelves lower. Someone else had searched it. Amelia heard a step. She closed the book in her hands. Sebastian entered. His expression hardened when he saw her. "Miss Rowan, Your Grace, were you looking for another sermon?" "No." He waited. Amelia could not tell him yet, not with only overheard words and a copied scrap. So she said Lady Marianne wanted something cheerful. Sebastian glanced at the book she held. Funeral Meditations. Amelia looked down. A mistake. A faint smile touched his mouth, then vanished. He crossed to the desk. "You refused to dance with me rather publicly. I believed Your Grace preferred honesty. I do. Usually. When it does not become a spectacle." Amelia closed the book. "Then we agree." He looked at her. "Why did you say you did not want my title?" "Because I do not. You speak as if a dukedom were a contagious illness." "No. Only an expensive distraction." He almost laughed. Almost. Then his attention shifted to the desk. The lock bore a fresh scratch. His face changed. Amelia saw it. So did he. Sebastian pulled a key from his waistcoat and opened the drawer. He searched once. Then again. Something was missing. "What is it?" Amelia asked. His gaze sharpened. She regretted the question at once. Nothing. It was not nothing. Sebastian shut the drawer. "Who has been in this room?" Amelia could have answered. "Honoria. Lord Merrow. Perhaps Nell. Perhaps half the house." Instead, she said, "I do not know." It was technically true. Sebastian studied her long enough to make the silence uncomfortable. Then he said, "Be careful, Miss Rowan." Amelia's pulse quickened. Of what he looked toward the door. Blackmere entertains people who have learned to smile while calculating the value of everything in the room, including you. His expression became still. Especially me. That evening the trap closed. Lady Marianne's sapphire brooch disappeared. It had belonged to her mother. She discovered the loss while dressing for dinner. The room erupted into confusion. Her maid searched the dressing table. Amelia searched the carpet. Lady Marianne began to shake. Then the housekeeper arrived. Mrs. Vale was a severe woman who had served at Blackmere for 27 years and distrusted disorder as if it were a moral failing. She asked everyone to leave the room. 10 minutes later she returned with 2 footmen. Her face had gone grey. "Miss Rowan." Amelia knew. Before Mrs. Vale spoke, Amelia knew. The sapphire brooch was found in Amelia's trunk. Lady Marianne stared at her. "No." The word came weakly. Amelia stood beside the fireplace. She felt cold despite the flames. "I did not take it." Mrs. Vale looked miserable. "I am sorry, miss," Lady Marianne repeated. "No," more firmly this time. She would never. Honoria appeared in the doorway. Not dramatically. That made it worse. She had apparently heard the disturbance. Her eyes widened at exactly the correct moment. Sebastian arrived behind her. The whole room fell silent. Mrs. Vale explained. Amelia watched Sebastian's face. No outrage. No sympathy. "Assessment." Honoria spoke softly. "Perhaps there is some explanation." Amelia almost admired the cruelty of it. A false defender seemed kinder than an accuser. Sebastian looked at Amelia. "Did you take the brooch?" "No." "Do you know how it entered your trunk?" "No." Lady Marianne reached for Amelia's hand. "She has cared for me for months. She handles my purse, my jewelry, my letters. If she wanted to steal from me, she could have done so 100 times. Honoria lowered her eyes. Desperation can make people behave unexpectedly. Sebastian turned toward her. "Lady Honoria." She stopped. He said nothing else. He did not need to. The rebuke was clear. But Amelia had still lost. The brooch existed. It had been found. Honoria's word did not need to defeat Amelia. Evidence had already done it. Mrs. Vale asked, "What should be done?" Sebastian looked toward Lady Marianne. "The brooch is hers. The decision is hers." Lady Marianne drew herself upright despite her shaking hands. "Nothing will be done." She turned to Amelia. "We leave tomorrow." Amelia closed her eyes for one heartbeat. That was exactly what Honoria wanted. The investigation would end. The witness would disappear. And whatever settlement Lord Merrow had mentioned would proceed without interruption. Later in the servants' passage, Nell found Amelia packing. The girl stood in the doorway. "You are leaving?" "Yes." Nell's face crumpled with guilt. "I am sorry." Amelia stopped folding her dress. "For what?" Nell looked behind her, then entered and closed the door. Not fully. A servant who closed doors attracted questions. She left it an inch open. "I saw Lady Honoria last night." Amelia's hands became still. "Where, coming out of your corridor, was she wearing an emerald bracelet?" Nell nodded. "Why did you deny seeing her?" "Because Mr. Croft told us anyone spreading tales about guests would be dismissed without character." Mr. Croft was the under-butler. Amelia had seen him once beside Honoria. Nell reached into her apron. "There is more." She produced a folded scrap. Amelia recognized the paper immediately. The stolen note. Not the whole thing. Half of it. "Where did you find this?" "In the kitchen grate this morning. It had not burned properly. I took it before the fire was stirred." Amelia opened it. The first line remained. "Miss Harcourt, your letters have not reached His Grace." Below it were several sentences Amelia had never seen. "I witnessed Lady Honoria receive them from Mr. Croft before they were taken to the library fire. His Grace must be told that Miss Harcourt did not ask him for money. The altered copy placed on his desk was not in her hand. At the bottom stood a name, Thomas Reed, former valet to His Grace." Amelia stared. A witness. A real one. Not a rumor. Not an overheard conversation. A man who had seen the letters intercepted and altered. Nell whispered, "There is another thing." She drew a small ledger page from beneath her apron. Amelia looked at the columns. Payments, dates, initials, HBMC. And beside them, amounts, £5, 10, 20, then one much larger entry, £50. The notation beside it read, "For Harcourt correspondence." Amelia's breath stopped. "Where did you get this? Mr. Croft keeps household extras in a little book behind the butler's pantry accounts. He tore this page out yesterday. I found it beneath the passage table. Why give it to me?" Nell's eyes filled. "Because my sister was dismissed from a house in Kent after a lady accused her of stealing a ring. She never found another place. The girl swallowed. She did not steal it. Amelia folded the page carefully. Truth had risen from the lowest corridor in the house. Exactly where powerful people never thought to look. Then a knock came. Both women froze. Sebastian stood beyond the partly open door. Nell went white. Amelia closed her hand around the ledger page. The Duke looked from Nell to Amelia. His gaze dropped to the burned letter. For several seconds no one spoke. Then Sebastian stepped inside and shut the door. He held something in his hand. An envelope. Old, creased, unopened. Amelia recognized the name on the front. Miss Evelyn Harcourt. Sebastian's voice was quiet. This was hidden behind the drawer in my library desk. He looked at the burned note in Amelia's hand. I believe, Miss Rowan, that you and I have been lied to by the same person. Amelia did not answer. Not yet. Because beneath Sebastian's thumb she could see the broken edge of the seal, and pressed into the wax was the unmistakable mark of Lord Merrow's signet ring. 4,859 over 8,000. 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0. Words. Sebastian placed the envelope on the narrow table between them. Nell stared at it as if it might explode. Amelia did not touch it. Not yet. She had learned enough in the last 2 days to distrust anything that appeared at exactly the right moment. Sebastian seemed to understand. He opened the envelope himself. Inside lay 3 sheets. The first was in Evelyn Harcourt's hand. The second looked almost identical. Almost. Amelia stood beside the candle and compared them. The forged copy changed only 4 lines. In Evelyn's original letter, she had written that her mother's debts embarrassed her and that she would rather withdraw from society than have Sebastian believe she expected rescue. In the altered version, those words became something else. A request for assistance, a reference to marriage, a suggestion that the Harcourt obligations could be settled if His Grace wished to prove his regard. The imitation was careful, not perfect. Amelia saw the difference in the capital H. Her father had taught her to notice handwriting when preparing copies of legal papers. The genuine Evelyn formed the letter with one clean stroke. The forged hand paused in the middle. Sebastian read both versions twice. His face changed very little. That made the anger more severe. How many women? Amelia asked. He looked toward the fire. I do not know. That answer frightened her more than a number would have. Nell spoke from beside the door. Mr. Reed might know. Sebastian turned. Thomas Reed left my service nearly 2 years ago. Dismissed. No. He resigned. Why? Sebastian was silent. Then he said, I believed he had betrayed a private confidence. Amelia looked at the altered letter. And now I believe someone wanted me to believe it. The room went still. The first trap had not been designed for Amelia. It had been designed for Sebastian. For years, Honoria had not merely removed rivals. She had shaped his judgment until every woman appeared calculating. Every request became proof. Every embarrassment became greed. Every approach became a campaign against his title. Amelia felt something cold move through her. It was not sympathy alone. It was recognition. Honoria had discovered the simplest way to control a suspicious man. Give him evidence that confirms what he already fears. Sebastian folded Evelyn's original letter. We must find Reed. Amelia shook her head. Not openly. His gaze sharpened. Why? Because Honoria already knows someone searched my room. She knows I heard enough to make me dangerous. If you suddenly summon your former valet, she will understand that you believe me. Sebastian did not like the logic. That did not make it less true. So you propose that I continue behaving as though I suspect you of theft? Yes. Nell looked horrified. Amelia continued. And I leave tomorrow with Lady Marianne. Sebastian stared at her. Absolutely not. It was the first time she had heard command enter his voice. Amelia almost smiled. Your Grace, that tone may work splendidly on tenants, footmen, and frightened young women at dinners. Nell covered a cough. Sebastian looked at the maid. Nell became intensely interested in the floor. Amelia said, Honoria expects me to leave. Let her believe she has succeeded. And where will you go to London? Lady Marianne keeps rooms there after Christmas. Sebastian frowned. Why London? because people who disappear from country houses often reappear where they must earn money. Thomas Reed had served a duke. If dismissed or disgraced, he would need employment. Perhaps at a club, a hotel, a livery office, a private house. Nell lifted her head. His sister lives near Clerkenwell. Sebastian turned sharply. How do you know servants know where other servants go? For one instant, Amelia saw the entire architecture of aristocratic ignorance. Upstairs, invitations were guarded. Downstairs, addresses travelled freely. Sebastian exhaled. Then I will have someone search Clerkenwell. No. Amelia's answer came too fast. He looked irritated. You object to everything, only to obvious things. A duke's man asking questions about a former valet would be noticed. Who should ask then? Amelia looked at Nell. Nell looked back, then at Amelia's plain travelling dress lying across the bed. For the first time in her life, Amelia understood that her lack of importance could be used deliberately. I should. Sebastian's face hardened. No, you have already said that, and I mean it more strongly now. Amelia folded the burned letter. Your Grace, no one notices a companion looking for inexpensive lodgings. No one wonders why she speaks to housemaids, shopkeepers, or porters. Sebastian stepped closer. You think invisibility makes you safe? No, I think it makes me useful. That silenced him. Not because he agreed, because he had no answer. Amelia left Blackmere the next morning. The departure was performed for witnesses. Lady Marianne complained loudly about insult. Amelia looked pale and humiliated. Honoria appeared on the front steps to offer regret. Sebastian did not come down. That part was his idea. If he had appeared kind, the deception would weaken. So Amelia entered the carriage beneath the gaze of servants and guests, as a disgraced companion whose employer had chosen loyalty over scandal. The cold bit through her gloves. Blackmere receded behind sleet. Amelia did not look back. 3 days later, London swallowed her. Lady Marianne's room stood in Bloomsbury, above a respectable widow who rented the lower floor to clerks. The accommodation was smaller than Blackmere, noisier, and infinitely more honest. Carriages rattled before dawn. Coal dust settled on windowsills. Street sellers shouted through fog. Nobody cared whom Amelia had refused to dance with. She preferred London immediately. Lady Marianne, however, was angry, not with Amelia, with the world. She sat beside the small parlour fire while Amelia explained enough of the truth to stop her from writing accusations to every woman she knew. Lady Marianne listened. Then she said, "So the Duke believes you. He believes the letters were altered." That was not my question. Amelia rearranged the coal. Lady Marianne watched her. "Amelia, I do not know what he believes about me." Lady Marianne sniffed. "Men with titles are often considered profound when they are merely slow." Amelia laughed despite herself. The sound surprised her. The next morning she went to Clerkenwell, not as Lady Marianne's companion, as herself. That distinction mattered. Amelia wore the older of her 2 dresses and carried a notebook. Her father's death had taken almost everything except what he had taught her. Arithmetic, copying, order, accuracy. Those skills had once seemed unsuitable for a woman who would probably marry a modest professional man. Now they became a trade. She placed a small notice through a stationer who allowed respectable women to advertise discreet services, accounts copied, household books balanced, letters written, inventories prepared, low fees, reliable hand. Within a week she had 3 clients, a widow who ran a lodging house, a dressmaker whose receipts had become impossible, a baker who distrusted his nephew's sums. Amelia worked at Lady Marianne's table each morning. She earned 7 shillings the first week, 9 the second. The amount was insignificant beside Blackmere money. It changed her more than jewels could have done. For the first time in her life, she received payment from strangers for skill that belonged only to her. Not her father, not Lady Marianne, not a husband she might someday marry. Her own work. She kept every coin in a blue cloth purse. Then she began searching for Thomas Reed. She asked laundresses, footmen, 2 coachmen, a porter at a gentleman's club, a maid who had once worked with Reed's cousin. The trail moved slowly. Clerkenwell to Holborn, Holborn to a coffee room near Fleet Street to a boarding house whose keeper remembered a quiet man with a scar near his jaw. Reed had left months earlier. Temporary failure. Amelia stood outside the boarding house in freezing rain and felt exhaustion sink through her. For 9 days she had searched. Nothing. That evening a letter arrived from Blackmere. Sebastian's hand. It contained only ordinary remarks. Lady Marianne is surely recovering. The weather remains disagreeable. Lord Merrow is expected tomorrow. No suspicion has been raised. Amelia understood the message beneath the dullness. The trap remained closed. Honoria felt safe. Amelia burned the letter after reading it. Not because she distrusted Sebastian, because she had learned what unburned letters could become. 2 mornings later the dressmaker brought her accounts. Among payments for silk thread and buttons appeared a name. Reed. Amelia's pen stopped. Mrs. Calder noticed. Something wrong. Who is Mr. Reed? The dressmaker shrugged. Which Reed? Thomas Reed. He delivers parcels for Mr. Bell's warehouse now and then. Where? Near Smithfield. Amelia felt her heart strike once against her ribs. Thomas Reed worked less than a mile from where she had first searched. Not as a valet, not in a gentleman's house. In a warehouse. The man who held the truth had fallen even farther down the social staircase than she expected. She found him that afternoon. Thomas Reed was 40, perhaps 42. He had once been broad-shouldered. Hard labor had narrowed him. A pale scar ran from his jaw toward his left ear. He recognized Sebastian's name before Amelia finished speaking. Then he walked away. Amelia followed. Mr. Reed. No, I have not asked the question yet. Does not matter. It concerns Lady Honoria Blackwood. He stopped, only for a moment, then continued. Amelia said, Miss Evelyn Harcourt's letters were intercepted. Reed stopped again. This time he turned. His face had gone white. Where did you hear that? From a letter you wrote. Fear replaced surprise. He looked up and down the street. That letter was destroyed. Not completely. Reed swore under his breath. Amelia waited. He studied her plain cloak. Who are you? A woman Lady Honoria tried to disgrace because I found what remained of your warning. He looked at her for a long time, then said, Come with me. They entered a cheap eating house where steam clouded the windows. Reed chose the back table. He did not remove his coat. I served His Grace 6 years. Was Lady Honoria often at Blackmere? Often enough. Did she intercept letters? Reed looked at his hands. At first I thought Mr. Croft was doing favours for Lord Merrow. Gambling information. Debts. Things gentlemen do not want repeated. Then letters began disappearing. From women, yes. Those who had attracted His Grace. Reed swallowed. Some were opened and returned. Some burned. Some copied. By whom Croft carried them. Lady Honoria altered them. Lord Merrow paid. Amelia thought of the ledger. Why? Reed laughed once without humour. Because Merrow is ruined. More ruined than society knows. Sebastian had lent him money. 3 times. Against what promises? Reed looked bitter. His Grace was foolishly loyal to the Earl. They knew each other as boys. Amelia remembered the conservatory. 3rd advance. No further advances. And Honoria needed marriage before Sebastian refused more money. Reed nodded. But there was another reason. Amelia waited. Reed leaned closer. Lord Merrow had already pledged property he did not fully control. If certain creditors examined the papers, there would be scandal. Marriage into Valencrist would bury the matter under settlement, money, and influence. Amelia felt the pieces locked together. Money, marriage. Manufactured rivals. Sebastian's distrust had been cultivated because Honoria needed every other woman to fail. Why did you leave? Reed's eyes hardened. I tried to tell His Grace. He believed Honoria not directly. Croft planted a memorandum suggesting I had sold details of His Grace's finances. Reed looked away. I was offered the choice to resign quietly or face accusation. His Grace thought he was showing mercy. That sentence stayed with Amelia. Mercy built on a lie could still destroy a life. Do you have proof? Reed hesitated. Yes. Amelia stopped breathing. What a book. Not Merrow's accounts. Croft's. Payments, copied seals, dates, letters arrived. Dates-altered letters were placed. Why keep it insurance? Where is it? Reed smiled grimly. Safe. Will you give it to Sebastian? No. Amelia stared. Why? Because I gave that family 6 years and left without character. Because His Grace did not listen. Because a man does not forget being treated like a thief. Amelia understood. She could not demand loyalty from someone whose loyalty had been punished, so she did not. She returned to her bookkeeping. For 3 weeks, she visited Reed twice, never asking for the ledger. Instead, she helped him, not with charity, with work. His warehouse wages were irregular, and he kept accounts badly. Amelia showed him how to track deliveries so shortages could not be charged against him. Then she helped his sister calculate the cost of taking 2 lodgers into her rooms. Reed watched, suspicious at first, then less so. Amelia never mentioned Sebastian during those visits. That was why on the 4th week Reed brought the book himself. It was small, black leather, the corners worn smooth. He placed it beside Amelia's blue purse. There, she did not reach for it. Are you certain? No. But certainty is a luxury. He pushed it toward her. Amelia opened it. Names, dates, payments, copies of phrases inserted into women's letters, references to Miss Harcourt, Mrs. Bellamy's daughter, a Lady Francis. 2 others Amelia had never heard of. Then one final entry, a planned payment, MC, to receive £100 after declaration at Blackmere Assembly. Amelia looked up. Declaration. Reed nodded. Croft. £100 after Honoria becomes engaged. When Reed pointed to the date, 6 days, Amelia's blood chilled. The assembly must be the winter gathering Sebastian had mentioned earlier, a ballroom full of the same people who had laughed at Amelia. Honoria intended to force the matter publicly. Amelia returned to Bloomsbury and wrote Sebastian 1 sentence. The arithmetic is complete. She sent it through a messenger who believed he was delivering an account. Sebastian arrived in London the next evening. No crest on the carriage, no Valencrest servant. He came alone. Lady Marianne received him with such cold dignity that Amelia suspected she enjoyed it. Sebastian accepted the punishment. Then Amelia showed him the ledger. He stood beside the little parlour table and read every page. No one interrupted. The fire sank low. A carriage passed outside. At last, Sebastian closed the book. I owe Reed an apology. More than one. Sebastian looked at Amelia. Yes, the word came quietly. She saw shame in him, not theatrical shame, the useful kind. The kind that could alter behavior. Then he said, Honoria must be confronted now. Amelia shook her head. Again. Sebastian looked toward the ceiling as though appealing to patience. Why wait? Because the ledger proves payments and interference. Honoria can still blame Croft. She will not escape through a servant. She will try. Amelia opened the book. And Lord Merrow will blame debt. Croft will blame orders. Each will step backward until the woman at the centre appears innocent. Sebastian's jaw tightened. What do you suggest? Let Honoria believe she has won. He stared at her. Amelia continued. Return to Blackmere. Invite the same people. Give her the public moment she wants. Sebastian understood before she finished. You want her to speak? Yes. To make the claim herself. To lie before witnesses. To believe no evidence remains. Sebastian walked to the window. And you I return to? No. Amelia sighed. We seem trapped in a repetitive form of conversation. This time I have reason. So do I. She pointed to the ledger. Everything happened because women were presented to you as hunters and servants were presented as liars. Honoria survives by controlling which class is believed. Sebastian turned. If this ends in a ballroom, both classes must be there. He looked at her for a long time, then said, You have become alarmingly difficult to command. Amelia placed the ledger inside her writing case. I have become employed. That did make him laugh. The sound filled Lady Marianne's little parlour. For one moment the entire conspiracy seemed far away. Then Sebastian grew serious. There is something you should know. Amelia waited. Honoria sent a message this morning. She intends to announce that I have asked for her hand. But you have not. No. Will anyone believe her? If Lord Merrow claims the understanding existed privately, many will. Amelia frowned. Why risk such a lie? Sebastian's face became grim. Because tomorrow I sign papers ending financial assistance to Merrow. There it was, the antagonist's final pressure, not love. Not jealousy, time. Honoria had reached the edge. Amelia knew what desperate people did at edges. They stopped disguising their intentions. Blackmere filled again 3 nights later. Amelia arrived after dark, not beside Lady Marianne, alone. She wore the same grey gown in which Honoria had humiliated her. That choice was deliberate. The servants' entrance opened first. Nell waited inside. Behind her stood Mrs. Vale and Thomas Reed. Sebastian had invited him back as a guest under his own name. Reed looked deeply uncomfortable in borrowed evening clothes. Good, Amelia thought. Truth rarely arrived dressed correctly. The plan was simple. Too simple. That frightened her. The ledger would remain hidden. Reed would remain out of sight. Sebastian would say nothing. Honoria would be allowed to make her declaration. Then Croft would be brought forward. If he denied everything, Reed would appear. If Reed was called a liar, the ledger would appear. If Lord Merrow denied the payments, Sebastian's own records of advances would answer him. Every piece had existed before the evening began. Nothing depended on luck. Then the plan broke. 10 minutes before the assembly, Nell ran into the service corridor. Her face was bloodless. "Miss Rowan, what happened? Mr. Croft is gone." Amelia froze. "Gone where?" "No one knows. His room is empty." And Mr. Reed. Nell shook her head. "Gone too." Amelia felt the floor vanish beneath her. Both witnesses, gone at once. Sebastian appeared at the corridor entrance. He had heard. His face became hard. The ledger. Amelia opened her writing case. Empty. For the first time in weeks, she could not think. Reed gone, Croft gone, ledger gone. The evidence they had built everything around had disappeared within minutes of the confrontation. Sebastian gripped the back of a chair. Someone knew. Amelia looked toward the ballroom doors. Beyond them, the orchestra had begun. Guests were arriving. Honoria had already entered. Amelia heard applause. Then Lord Merrow's voice, loud, confident. He was asking for silence. Sebastian moved toward the ballroom. Amelia caught his arm. "Wait. For what?" She had no answer. Nothing remained. No Reed, no ledger, no confession. Only altered letters and suspicions that Honoria could dismiss as misunderstandings. The trap had closed on the wrong person. Then Nell whispered, "Miss Rowan." Amelia turned. The girl was staring at the floor. Near the service door lay a torn strip of black leather from the ledger binding. Beside it was a smear of mud, and embedded in the mud was a tiny fragment of red sealing wax. Amelia crouched. Stamped into the wax was not Lord Merrow's signet. It was the crest of Valencrest. Sebastian went still. No one outside the household should have possessed that seal. Amelia looked toward the locked library at the end of the passage. For the first time in her life, she understood that the conspiracy had never ended with Honoria, Lord Merrow, or a bribed under-butler. Someone inside Sebastian's own household had been protecting it, and that person was now waiting in the ballroom for the final lie to become truth. 7,246 over 8,000, 120,000. Words Lord Merrow was already speaking when Sebastian and Amelia entered the ballroom. The same chandeliers burned above the same polished floor. Many of the same faces had returned. Mrs. Bellamy stood near the musicians. Lady Frances sat beside her mother. 2 gentlemen who had laughed when Honoria humiliated Amelia now watched from beneath the gallery. And there at the center of the room stood Lady Honoria Blackwood. She wore white, not bridal white, something more calculated, ivory satin, pearls, a narrow band of emeralds at her throat. She looked like a woman who had already decided how history would remember the evening. Lord Merrow lifted his glass. "My friends, there are moments when private happiness deserves public acknowledgement." Amelia stopped near the doorway. Sebastian remained beside her. A murmur passed through the guests. Honoria lowered her eyes. "Perfectly," Lord Merrow continued. "My daughter has endured months of uncertainty with dignity. His Grace has always been cautious concerning marriage, as all here know. But I am pleased to say that an understanding has at last been reached between our families." The ballroom stirred. Someone gasped. Then applause began. Not everyone joined. Amelia watched Sebastian. His face had become unreadable. Honoria looked toward him. For one dangerous second, Amelia wondered whether Sebastian would simply denounce her. He could. One sentence from a duke might destroy the declaration, but that would not be enough. Society would call it a misunderstanding. Mero would claim confusion. Honoria would become a woman publicly humiliated by a cruel man. The truth would retreat again. So Sebastian said nothing. Honoria mistook the silence for opportunity. She extended one gloved hand. Sebastian. The applause faded. He did not move. Honoria's smile tightened. Surely there is no need to be shy before friends. A few people laughed. Not cruelly, nervously. Amelia recognized that sound. It was the same laughter people used when power behaved strangely, and no one wished to be first to admit it. Then a voice came from the edge of the room. There is every need. Mrs. Vale stepped forward. The housekeeper wore black. No jewels, no silk, only the keys at her waist. Half the guests looked offended by her existence in the ballroom. Lord Mero's face changed. Mrs. Vale curtsied to Sebastian. "Your Grace, forgive me." Honoria turned. "This is hardly the time for household matters." Mrs. Vale looked at her. "It concerns a household matter, my lady, one that has lasted several years." The room went silent. Amelia felt the first movement of the trap, not from where they had planned. "From somewhere else," Mrs. Vale continued. "I have served Blackmere for 27 years. During that time I have seen servants dismissed guests, quarrel, fortunes rise and fortunes fail." She took a breath. "But I have never before seen letters belonging to His Grace removed from the Morning Post before reaching his desk." Honoria did not blink. "An extraordinary accusation." "It is not an accusation." Mrs. Vale's voice trembled. "It is a confession." A murmur broke across the ballroom. Sebastian stepped forward. "Mrs. Vale." She looked at him. "I knew some letters were being diverted. For how long?" "Nearly 2 years." The room became so still that the fire in the distant grate could be heard. Sebastian's expression hardened. "Why did you say nothing?" Mrs. Vale lowered her eyes. "Because I thought Mr. Croft was protecting your Grace from improper correspondence." Honoria gave a soft laugh. "There. You see," Mrs. Vale lifted her head. "Until I discovered he was being paid." Honoria's smile disappeared. Lord Mero stepped in. "This is absurd. A servant misunderstands a gratuity," and suddenly Mrs. Vale turned toward him. "I saw your daughter give Mr. Croft money in the West Passage." Mero stopped. Honoria said, "And you remained silent for 2 years." "Yes," Mrs. Vale swallowed. "That is my shame." The words changed the room. Amelia felt it. A witness admitting her own failure was harder to dismiss than one pretending perfection. Mrs. Vale continued. "I told myself it was not my place. I told myself His Grace would discover anything important. I told myself ladies and gentlemen understood matters beyond servants." Her voice broke. Then Miss Rowan was accused of theft. Amelia looked at her. Mrs. Vale's eyes met hers, and I searched her trunk. Lady Marianne moved through the crowd. She had arrived unnoticed behind them. "Yes, you did." Mrs. Vale bowed her head. "I found the brooch because Mr. Croft told me precisely which compartment to inspect first." A wave of whispers spread. Lady Marianne's face went white. "You never told me that." "I did not understand it then." Honoria stepped forward. "Enough." Her voice was sharper now. "This is becoming indecent." Amelia heard the word and almost smiled. "Indecent. Not false." Lord Mero raised his voice. "Your Grace, surely you will not permit servants to insult guests in your own ballroom." Sebastian looked at him. "I am finding that servants have been insulted quite enough in my house." Lord Mero's colour deepened. "Then where is your proof?" "There." The question struck exactly where the plan was weakest. The ledger was gone. Thomas Reed was gone. Croft was gone. Mrs. Vale's testimony mattered, but Honoria could still deny. Amelia saw confidence return to her face. Honoria turned toward the guests. "I am deeply sorry you must witness this. Miss Rowan has plainly encouraged a grievance among the staff, after being dismissed under unfortunate circumstances." Amelia remained still. Honoria looked directly at her. A poor companion discovers that His Grace speaks kindly to her. She imagines importance. Then, when she is reminded of her position, she retaliates. The old humiliation returned. The grey dress. The laughter. The marble column. Only now Amelia did not feel small. She stepped into the center of the ballroom. I was not dismissed. Honoria's eyes narrowed. I left because you placed Lady Marianne's brooch in my trunk. A murmur. Honoria gave a pitying smile. Can you prove that? Not yet. Then perhaps. But you can prove something else. Amelia turned toward Lord Merrow. The Earl stiffened. You received 3 financial advances from His Grace. Merrow looked at Sebastian. Private business. Amelia nodded. Indeed, the first 2 were made before Miss Harcourt came to Blackmere. The third, shortly after she left. Merrow's face changed, only slightly. Amelia continued. Each time a woman came close enough to His Grace for marriage to become possible, letters appeared suggesting that she wanted money. Honoria said coincidence. Perhaps. Amelia looked at Lady Frances. My lady, did you once write to His Grace after your mother became ill? Lady Frances stared. Her mother grabbed her arm. Do not answer. Lady Frances slowly stood. Yes. Honoria laughed. Many women wrote to him. Amelia asked, Did you ask him for £12,000? The ballroom erupted in whispers. Lady Frances went pale. No. Her mother stood. Absolutely not. Sebastian looked at Lady Frances. The letter I received asked for precisely that amount. Lady Frances shook her head. I asked only whether your physician might recommend someone for my mother. No one moved. Sebastian absorbed the words. Another woman rose. Mrs. Bellamy's daughter. My letter said something similar. Her mother whispered Clara. But Clara continued. I wrote that I could not accept another invitation because my brother's debts had become public. Sebastian looked at her. The copy I received proposed that your brother's debts might be settled after marriage. Clara's face crumpled. I never wrote that. Now the ballroom changed. This was no longer Amelia against Honoria. The discarded women had become witnesses. One by one the pattern emerged. Different handwriting, different families, the same alteration. Money, always money. Honoria's breathing became visible. Lord Merrow spoke quickly. This proves nothing except interference by Croft. Exactly, Amelia said. Honoria looked at her. Exactly, Amelia nodded. That is what I expected you to say. Honoria realized too late. Her face tightened. Amelia continued. Mr. Croft was paid to intercept correspondence. Thomas Reed discovered it. Someone then made Reed appear dishonest, just as I was later made to appear dishonest. Honoria lifted her chin. And where is this, Mr. Reed? No answer came. A small victory returned to her eyes. Where is your witness? Miss Rowan Amelia looked toward the service doors. Nothing. Her pulse struck hard. Sebastian said quietly, Amelia. It was the first time he had used her Christian name in public. She heard concern. She did not look at him. Honoria did. And the sight of that concern did something dangerous to her restraint. You see, Honoria's voice sharpened. This was never about letters. She pointed at Amelia. It was about her. There was the choice. The moment Amelia had been waiting for. Honoria continued before anyone could stop her. She came here pretending not to want him, pretending not to care for rank. All while turning servants against me and searching private rooms. Amelia said softly, I never searched your room. Honoria laughed. No, you merely stole a note from the library. I found it inside a book. A book that was not meant to be touched. The words hung in the air. Amelia did not move. Neither did Sebastian. Then Lady Marianne whispered, How did you know where she found it? Honoria froze. A terrible silence followed. Not one person laughed. Amelia spoke. I never told anyone in this room which book contained that note. Honoria's mouth opened. Nothing came. Sebastian stepped forward. Nor did I. Lord Merrow moved toward his daughter. Honoria. She turned on him. Do not. Too late. The mask had cracked. Amelia said, You knew because you searched for it. Honoria looked around the ballroom, at faces that had once admired her. Then she made the mistake Amelia had hoped desperation would force. Yes. The word came like a slap. Merrow closed his eyes. Honoria's voice rose. Yes, I searched for it. Why should I not? Do you know what all of you did? She turned toward Lady Frances, toward Clara Bellamy. You came here with mothers, debts, brothers, schemes. Every one of you wanted him. Lady Francis said I did not. Honoria laughed. You would have taken him. Any woman would. Her eyes found Amelia, except apparently Saint Amelia Rowan. The contempt was naked now. Amelia said nothing. Honoria stepped closer. Do you think I wanted to spend years smiling at women who imagined themselves duchesses? Do you think I enjoyed watching my father's estate rot, while creditors waited? Lord Merrow whispered. Enough. She ignored him. One marriage would have solved everything. Everything. There it was. The motive spoken aloud. Money, estate, position. Honoria turned to Sebastian. I understood what you needed. You hated women asking for your fortune, so I made certain you saw what they were. Sebastian's face went cold. You made certain I saw what you wanted me to see. Honoria's composure finally broke. And was I wrong? Look at them. She swept her hand across the room. They all wanted something. Sebastian looked around. Perhaps. Then he looked back at her. But you denied me the right to decide what I was willing to give. Silence. Honoria stared. That was the deepest wound. Not that she had wanted his title, that she had manipulated his judgment. A door opened behind the musicians. Everyone turned. Thomas Reed entered. Beside him walked Mr. Croft. Croft's hands were not bound. No constable dragged him. That made the sight more powerful. Reed carried the black ledger. Amelia exhaled. For the first time that evening, her knees almost weakened. Sebastian looked at Reed. Where were you? Reed glanced at Croft, stopping him from reaching the railway. Croft looked miserable. Mrs. Vale had found him packing. He ran through the stable yard. Reed followed. Nell appeared behind them breathless. And the ledger? Reed held it up. Croft stole it from Miss Rowan's case. Croft covered his face. Lord Merrow stepped backward. Honoria did not. She seemed beyond fear now. Reed crossed the ballroom. People moved aside for him. A former valet, a warehouse worker, a man who once would have entered only through a service door. Now he stood beneath the chandelier. He placed the ledger in Sebastian's hands. Then he said, Your Grace, I tried once before. Sebastian looked at him. I know. No. Reed's voice remained firm. You know now. That is different. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Reed continued. I was innocent then, too. The room held its breath. Sebastian lowered his head. You were, and I failed you. No excuses, no reference to false evidence, no explanation about duty or reputation. Only that. Reed's expression shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something had opened. Sebastian turned toward Croft. Croft looked at Lord Merrow. The Earl said sharply, Do not look at me. That ended Croft's loyalty. He pointed toward Merrow. He paid me. A gasp. Then Croft pointed toward Honoria. She gave me the letters. Honoria closed her eyes. Croft continued. I changed none of them myself. Lady Honoria copied the altered passages. His lordship paid after each one was placed where his grace would find it. Merrow erupted. Liar. Reed opened the ledger. Dates. Amounts. Initials. Receipts copied in Croft's hand. Sebastian's financial records confirmed the advances to Merrow. Mrs. Vale confirmed access to the post. Nell confirmed Honoria's movements. Lady Francis and Clara confirmed the altered contents. Miss Harcourt's surviving original letter confirmed the method. The evidence did not arrive from nowhere. It had been scattered through the house for years. For once, the people who had ignored each piece were forced to see the pattern. Honoria sank into a chair. No one approached her. Lord Merrow attempted to leave. Sebastian stopped him, not physically. He only spoke his name. Merrow halted. The money advanced to you will be accounted for formally. Merrow turned. Sebastian continued. Any matter concerning property pledged without proper authority will be placed before my solicitor. If further action is required, it will be handled through the proper authorities. Merrow's shoulders collapsed. The consequences began before the evening ended. Not dramatically, more cruelly. Mrs. Bellamy withdrew an invitation from Honoria for the following week. Lady Francis asked that her cloak be brought because she would no longer remain in the same room. One gentleman who had spent years dining at Merrow House quietly told his wife they would not attend again. Doors began closing. Invisible ones. The kind, aristocratic society could close without a sound. Croft was dismissed, not without wages owed. Sebastian insisted upon that. But without recommendation, Mrs. Vale kept her position after admitting her silence. Nell received promotion to parlourmaid months later, though. When told, she claimed she had always suspected truth, eventually required better wages. It was the only joke anyone remembered from that terrible evening. Then Honoria asked Amelia to remain. The ballroom had mostly emptied. Lord Merrow had left with his solicitor. Sebastian stood by the fireplace. Lady Marianne waited nearby. Honoria looked smaller without an audience. Amelia almost resented that. Cruel people were easier to hate while surrounded by admirers. Honoria said, "I owe you an apology." Amelia waited. "I placed the brooch. I searched your room. I meant to ruin your name enough that no respectable household would employ you." Lady Marianne stiffened. Honoria looked at Amelia. "I was afraid." Amelia answered quietly. "So was Nell." Honoria blinked. Amelia continued. "So was Thomas Reed. So were the women whose letters you altered. Fear did not make all of you choose the same thing." Honoria looked down. "Will you forgive me?" Amelia considered it. Then said, "No, not today." Honoria's face tightened. Amelia did not enjoy the answer. That mattered. Revenge would have enjoyed it. Dignity did not need to, she added. "Perhaps one day I will stop being angry. That is not the same as giving you back my trust." Honoria nodded. It was more humility than Amelia had ever seen from her. Then she left. Sebastian and Amelia were alone in the ballroom. Almost. Lady Marianne remained at the door, very obviously listening. Sebastian looked at Amelia's grey dress. "You wore it deliberately." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted to know whether it would still make me feel poor." And Amelia looked around the ballroom. The marble, the candles, the expensive floor, the empty chairs. No. Sebastian smiled. Outside, snow had begun. He walked with her toward the garden doors. They did not step outside. The night was too cold. Instead, they stood inside the glass, watching flakes settle on the dark hedges. The garden was the only place at Blackmere where no one had ever demanded performance from them. Sebastian said, "I owe you an apology, too." "For what?" "For assuming your lack of interest was another form of strategy." Amelia glanced at him. It was strategy. His face fell. She continued, "I was trying to keep my position." He laughed softly, then became serious. "I have spent years believing I was difficult to deceive. You were difficult to approach. That is not the same thing." He accepted the correction. "Will you return to Blackmere?" As Lady Marianne's companion, no. Amelia looked at him. Sebastian took a breath. "Not as my Duchess, either. Not unless you someday wish it." Her heartbeat changed. He continued, "Return as yourself. That was a better proposal than marriage." For the moment. Amelia went back to London. She kept her 3 clients, then 5, then 9. By spring, she rented a small room for her accounting work 2 streets from Lady Marianne. Women brought household books. Shopkeepers brought invoices. Widows brought papers they had been told were too difficult for them to understand. Amelia understood them. She earned money. Not much at first. Enough. Sebastian visited London. Sometimes he brought estate accounts and asked questions he already knew she could answer. Amelia told him this was an inefficient method of courtship. He replied that every other method available to a duke had already proved disastrous. Their affection grew slowly, in work, in argument. In long walks through the garden when Amelia visited Blackmere again, not because he rescued her, not because she healed him by simply being different from other women. They learned to see one another without converting admiration into ownership. A year after the Winter Assembly, Sebastian asked Amelia to marry him. There was no ballroom, no audience, no family council. He asked in the Blackmere garden beside a bare rose trellis while Amelia's glove was stained with ink. She looked at him for a long time. Then said, "Your title is still not especially tempting." Sebastian nodded solemnly. "I feared as much, but the man has improved. That is encouraging." She said yes. Thomas Reed returned to Blackmere as steward's assistant, not valet. He never recovered the years he had lost. He did recover his name. Mrs. Vale retired with respect. Nell eventually became housekeeper of another estate, and wrote Amelia letters filled with spelling errors, excellent observations, and outrageous gossip. Lady Honoria left England for several years with relatives. Some invitations never returned. Others did. Society was not perfectly just. It rarely was. But it remembered, and Lord Merrow spent what remained of his life repairing financial damage that marriage could no longer conceal. On a cold evening years later, Amelia sat at a modest writing desk at Blackmere with account books open before her. A child's wooden horse lay beneath the chair. Sebastian entered carrying 2 cups of tea himself because the servants were busy with supper. Amelia looked at the tray. "Your Grace has fallen very far." He set it down. "I married badly." She smiled. Outside winter pressed against the windows. Inside the fire was warm. Amelia reached for the blue cloth purse she still kept in the top drawer. It held no money now. Only the first 7 shillings she had earned in London. She never spent them. Not because they were valuable, because they reminded her that the first thing she had truly gained was not a duke. It was the right to stand on her own feet. A title could open doors, but dignity decided which ones were worth entering. If you enjoyed Amelia's journey, please like the story, subscribe for more tales of courage beneath aristocratic splendor, and support the channel so these stories can continue. 9,871, over 8,000, 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0 words.